Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Neoteran Herald Weekly. This is the weekly broadcast that gives you guidance into what's important in the cosmic arena for the week. We are coming to you live on YouTube, and I'm trying to see if I can check if people have joined in. If you've joined us and you can hear us, you can respond in the chat. We don't have a lot of time because we have three things to do today. We are both set to look at this week. We'll have a teaching, and then after we've done the teaching, and I am trying to see if there is anyone who has joined us. If you can hear us, let us know. If you can hear us on YouTube, let us know in the comments. Thank you. You can see there is already 3 people apparently who are online. So thank you so much. So if you can see, we've been alternate. One of the things we're going to do is the very last thing we're going to do today is to speak to creatively program what happens over the week that is coming, and we're still 1 hour from that moment in time. But before we do that, we're going to go through a teaching. We're going to look at some of the concepts that people have been raising some questions about. Then what we're going to go is take an in-depth look at what the 35th week of the Neoteran Calendar, year 5, looks like and what it's about. There's somebody saying that they cannot hear us. Let me try to help with that. Thank you for that feedback. We are trying to correct that. Just a minute. I don't know. Please, let's hear back. If you can make comment immediately in the YouTube chat, in the live chat section. That is what, but I'm getting it's now. Somebody saying it's clear. Thank you for that. So we do want to move quickly a little bit. Maybe this is the very first thing of its kind we are doing, and therefore maybe we may have a few 1 or 2 teething problems, but we can assure you that will change. So let me just begin by just doing a little bit of an introduction of who I am. My name is Jorogo Ahomi Warugongo, your personal astrologer. I am the founder and the lead astrologer at Neoteran Astrology, a community of people. If you have not joined us, we'll be putting in the description the link by which you can join us on our WhatsApp community, where most of the communication and the things that we do happen. So let us delve straight into the teaching as it is, because we just have about 58 minutes in which we will have to speak as a new week starts. And today I want us to speak about a question that actually I've gotten a lot of questions about. A lot of the things that we do in Neoteran astrology, and I want to be specific that what you're talking about here is Neoteran astrology, because it's not all astrology, not all kind of astrology follow the same sort of premises like we follow. Is what we call transits. And therefore, what is a transit? Why has it got such an important and central place in our practice. So this is a phenomenon of an astrological body. An astrological body, sometimes you'll hear us referring to them as celestial bodies. And that just means it's something that you can look outside. It's not anchored on the earth, but it's not put there. Maybe it's not a human satellite, but it's fixed in the sky or moves across the sky. It's a celestial. It could be a star, it could be a planet. These are just examples of celestial or astrological bodies. They can pass, when it passes across a line or a point in the celestial heavens, demarcating either the beginning or the end of a specified division. And that division could be many things. It could be a house, it could be a hemisphere. Don't worry if you don't understand what celestial houses and hemispheres are. We'll be able to do these things. It's not possible to begin like from the ground up because the sort of references that we speak about, they are interchangeable, or rather they refer to each other. Like if I began by speaking about houses, I'll have to speak about cycles and I'll have to speak about transits. And the very same way, if I begin with transits, I'll have to refer to houses and celestial divisions. But that is just a way of dividing the heavens. The very same way, like the earth is divided into continents and countries and states or provinces, you find that the heavens can be divided similarly. And when a planet or a body makes such a transit, that is what we call, or it moves across a line or a point. You'll be able to understand this as you move along, because in Neoteran astrology, we have two kinds of transit. I'm trying to do this as I keep an eye on the timer so that we don't take more time than we need to. So two Neoteran astrology transits are what we call diurnal transits or diurnal cycle transits and Neoteran planetary cycle transits. And that automatically tells you we're talking about two kinds of cycles that happen in the heavens. They're diurnal cycles and planetary cycles. I've done a video on this. I know it's not yet public, but those who are part of our community already know about that because I was trying to explain the mechanics of heavens. You understand how the heavens move. You can understand them through two kinds of cycles, one diurnal, another one planetary. I'm going to speak about those terms very shortly. Don't worry if they don't make complete sense to you. So a diurnal cycle transit, as you may understand, or rather let's speak about a diurnal cycle. A diurnal cycle is one that takes place across 24 hours, and the second point in here will illustrate that. So that transit is one of a celestial body or a point passing across a specified celestial line or point during that celestial body's diurnal cycle. So diurnal cycle is the cycle that takes place over a day, the rising and setting cycle. We understand that. So all celestial bodies and points, other than just what we call the North or South Pole, or any celestial body that may be located exactly on either the North or South celestial pole. By the way, one thing to understand this is to take back your understanding to the globe of the earth, because the earth is modeled upon the heavens. Everything you see, the equator, is based on, I'm trying to see if I can find anything like going on in the charts, but I'm not seeing anything, but I'm monitoring the charts. So especially if you have a question, you can ask in that live video feed. So this is I was talking about the south and the north celestial pole. Just like the poles of the earth, when the earth is turning around, the north and the celestial poles stick at one place. They remain where they are. That's the very same thing with the heavens. The heavens, when they revolve, the south and the north pole remain at the same place they are. And each cycle is almost exactly 24 hours long. Whether you're talking about the moon's diurnal cycle, the sun's diurnal cycle, or Venus's diurnal cycle, or a star, like let's say something like which is the most like let's say Proxima Centauri, or what we call Regio Centaurus, the closest star to the Earth, or Sirius, the brightest star in the sky. It has its own diurnal cycle. Usually stars have a cycle that is about 7 minutes shorter than that of a sun or that of a solar day. That is what defines for us what we call sidereal day. But again, that is not the exact point of what we are learning today. During one diurnal cycle, which I've said is about 24 hours long, just like the length of a day, an astrological body will undergo all its diurnal cycle transits. So the transits, we're going to look at it a bit about them as we go into a little more detail of this. And by the way, another thing is we have a blog. We have a blog called neoteranastrology.wordpress.com, and we're going to be giving a version of this in more detail. You can be able to go there and learn a little bit more. Now, the most familiar, the most universally familiar diurnal transits, because we do have them, is what people call sunset and sunrises. So you can see we are talking about very common things that every one of us experiences, sunset and sunrises. So in Neoteran astrology, we defer to sunset as what we call the solar descendant transit, because the sun is descending at that point, and when the sun rises in the morning, that is the solar ascendant transit. Now, let's go to what we call now the Neoteran planetary cycle transits. So these are transits, as the name says, they are attached to the planetary cycle. These cycles, they are specific to certain bodies. Planets, comets, and other bodies, they're not exactly bodies, they are points in the celestial heavens. You call them transitory celestial points. When you do a lot more of what we do our astrology, you'll be able to understand them. One of them is called the anti-solar point, and we have the two lunar nodes. The lunar nodes are just the points that give us an indication of when an eclipse happens. That's why, depending on how the sun and the moon interact, these points are very important, pinpointing the location of the point in time when you have either a solar eclipse or a lunar eclipse. So lunar nodes usually describe the place of eclipses. They are very, very important when we are describing eclipses. Neoteran planet cycles are cycle transits are unique for astrological bodies that exhibit planetary motion. So for a body to have planetary cycle transits, it needs to have planetary motion. And that means beyond the diurnal motion that we see every day happening with the stars and planets rising and setting and undergoing what we call star stills or culmination at the upper and the lower mid heavens, they also exhibit another cycle that can be seen over many, many days. Again, if you want to understand, we'll be doing more material about planetary motion and planetary cycles for us to understand. Now, just an extension, this is just an explanation of just what we've just said. So unlike diurnal cycle transits, planetary cycle transits do not apply to stars and are fixed. And I don't know whether my lower third, but the lower third is giving issues. So you can't be able to see some of the things you're saying, but I'm taking it away. That graphic at the bottom of the screen may have been blocking some of the points you're making. So we're talking about planetary cycles. So there are only two types of bodies that do not undergo planetary cycles. They don't have planetary cycles. These are stars. And then we have fixed celestial points. In earlier understanding about astrology, fixed stars were also considered to be fixed. But in reality, when you study them over many, many years, you'll understand that actually stars are just as transitory as planets, but their motions is very different. Okay, it's much slower, takes many, many hundreds of years to be noticeable, but it is definitely there, and it speaks of certain signs and understandings for us. And We have fixed celestial points. Some of the most important ones are the equinox and solstice points. And these are important first with the motion of the sun, like we know when the sun is at the equator. At the beginning of our year, we talk about a descendant equinox. So that point at which the sun aligns with to give us the signal that it's an equinox, is a day of equal night and day length across the world. That point does not move. It doesn't move across generations. Even if you live across millennia and you go from age to age, from beginning to the complete annihilation of the world and the heavens as we know them, the equinoxes and the solstices will be where they are, according to understanding. This is a little bit of an interpretation that is a little bit different from what you may have heard about astronomy or astrology. And by the way, even if you look at the word transit from the common understanding, or even within the context of astronomy or astrology, you find that our interpretation is decidedly different. And that's why we bother to give these kind of interpretations. Now, I want us to go to some very specific transits. And these are the ones we call Neoteran creative gateway transits. It's very, very important when you see that there's a term that is preceded by the designation Neoteran. That means from it there is a unique interpretation that is unique to our own understanding of astronomy, for us to be able that gives us, it may be related to exactly what astronomers or maybe astrologers think about, but it has a specific and far more particular, and let me say a more applicable sense from our own understanding, philosophy, and creed. And I am looking at the comments on the YouTube live. And thank you, Dorcas. You're tuned in and you're saying I'm quite audible. Thank you for that feedback. Actually, I realized there could have been something about my positioning of my microphone that could have been creating a little bit of dissonance with my voice. And thank you. There's also, yes, Daniel Wajala says you can share the blog link. Thank you, Dan. We'll do that. It's because the content that is there, what we had wanted to do is to ensure that that content was ready before we went with the live video, but it was not quite yet ready because there are so many things that we're doing and for the very first time. And what we'll do is we'll have actually two detailed articles. One of the articles will cover today's teaching. The other one will be for the understanding what is ahead next week, and they'll be ready tonight. You'll be able to get them and you'll be able to get them. But actually the blog link, actually I'm wondering whether it is possible. It was there in the publicity poster. It is neoteranastrology.wordpress.com. Soon we'll have a proper hosted domain name for our blog, and it will be a lot easier for us to continue interacting that way. So as I've said, we're still talking about diurnal, or rather this other group, this special group of transits. So these gateway transits are important, and they are special transits. And they don't just apply to the diurnal cycles, but they apply also to planetary cycles. If you want to differentiate between diurnal cycle is the daily cycle, happens about 24 hours. And the planetary cycle is the one that takes about a lengthier period of time. Like now for the sun, which is a planet, of course, in our system, the diurnal cycle, or rather the planetary cycle takes 365.24 something days, about 365 and a quarter days. So this is 365, depending on, or rather, if you look at like our calendar, that takes about 355 in some years, anywhere from 353 days to 383 days. But that is a year in our system. But in reality, when you look at what we define as a solar year, which is not exactly the same as a calendar year, we mark that 365 and a quarter days of the sun moving from, like, let's say at the point we call the equinox point, and taking it across the houses of heavens, and it comes back there. We do have a way of marking that. And this diurnal, or rather creative gateway transit, let me just say this before I go into the second point. When we are talking about transits in general, they can define something as what happens, like now, let's say with the sun, what happens for us to say we have moved from 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock. That is because the sun has done a transit across what we call a celestial house, a terrestrial house, rather, for now I'm going a little bit deeper, a terrestrial house where you are located, because where you are located, your home or maybe a place of work, wherever it is that you consider significant, or where you are right now, there is a clock that is tied to the motions of the heavens. And when 1 hour moves, when it moves from 1 hour to another, the sun has made a transit across what we call a terrestrial house. It has moved from maybe the first to the second. And therefore, we say we have moved from 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock. So that one is not really a gateway transit, but it's still a diurnal transit. So the gateway transits that are both important in diurnal cycles and planetary cycles, that's where this planetary body, the astrological body rather, it doesn't have to be a planetary one. It can just be any astrological body. We say even the stars or even fixed points in the heavens. They can move from one phase or period of that cycle to another. So a very good example, of course, is like the sun. The sun, like let's say, when it moves from the lower heavens to the upper heavens, we say the sun has risen. So that transit point upon which it does that transit from the darkness to light, that is a gateway transit. And gateway transits, creative gateway transits, they speak about there being an opening or there being a chance to speak in a creative way to cause change in the world as it is, in your world. And these are the ones that we keep sharing every day. If you've been part of our community, you'll see that we've been sharing these transits and telling you it's time for the descendant transit. Like let's say we're talking about the new week starting, as you can see, in about 39 minutes only. And that is the point that indicates for us the beginning of the week, the beginning of the first day of the week, or of the day of the week of week number 35, starting just 39 minutes now, is a gateway transit, is a creative gateway transit. And that moment we realize it's important that you speak at that moment, order the kind of outcomes, the kind of accesses you'd like to have, the kind of influence you'd like to make across the week that is coming. And that is why it's important that you get it right, because this point starts at one particular time. Now, let's look at the last part of our teaching today. And the points at which we know we are at this transit is not just an ordinary diurnal or planetary transit. We know because it happens in that cycle where the planetary or the celestial body is at what we call the start of its cycle. Sorry, let me go to that proper slide in our display. And of course, at the beginning, like the beginning of any period of time that is important, either the start of a day, the start of a month. Well, the start of a week is unique in itself because the start of a week or the length of what of a week is not based on any planetary cycle. There is quite another definition of what a week is. But of course, the start of the week is defined by the start of the first day of the week. And the start of a day, the day is defined by a diurnal cycle of the sun. And therefore, we can be able to know this is when the week starts, even if the week itself, the period of 7 days, is not a representation of a cycle itself. A day is, and even an hour, of course, it's not really a cycle, but it's quite a phase. So at the start of that cycle, we have indicators that show us that is the start. Then when we reach at the quarter point in that cycle, again, that is an indication of another creative gateway transit, the midpoint of a cycle and the 3/4 point of our cycle. So because the easiest cycle to understand is that of the day, because all of us understand the times of the day. They are so much clear in our eyes. The sign is very much something that you cannot really ignore because, of course, it affects the immediacy of our understanding about the passage of time. So the start of the day for us, and actually what is naturally most effective is to start and to count and to begin of a day at the descendant. So when the sun descends across the western horizon, we begin a day. Then at the quarter point, so that's the sunset is the start, and we have a creative gateway transit at that point. Then when we reach the quarter point of the diurnal cycle of the sun, that is at midnight, at solar midnight, again, that is another gateway. Then we have the midpoint where the sun reaches the middle point of its cycle. And usually at this point, the midpoint is very, very important. It is where we move away from darkness, or we move away from the descending to the ascent, to go to light. Midpoint, therefore, with respect to the sun's diurnal cycle, is the sunrise. And then you have the 3/4 point, which is the very last transit of the cycle. It is for the sun the midway point, or rather the upper mid-heaven. It is where the sun is at exactly solar noon. And that is itself culmination. Another way to understand, we are going to explain these to a lot more detail, maybe in the post we are going to make, and which we are going to edit over time. Tonight may not be the exact, the complete definition of all these points, is that both the start and the midpoint have particular characteristics. They are very momentary and transient in nature, but they also move. They are very fixed in their understanding. Like if you study where the sun sets, those of us, of course, who follow our daily indications about where the sun is rising, when the sun is rising or setting, we do give you some indicators, degrees at where the sun is, whatever it is at the start and at its midpoint, and you see that it varies. It varies for if you were, many of us, of course, because we are located at the equator, very close to the equator rather, the sunrises and sunsets seem to be exactly the same. I'm trying to see whether we do have any new comments. Not yet, I don't have any new comments. They do happen at the same point. But if you standing, okay, rather the start and midpoint do seem to move. They are momentary in the way they change. But the quarter point at the 3/4 point are usually what we call culminations. And they become the culminations that happen above at the most ascendant point a planet can get, as high as it can get in its cycle, or as low as it can get. And when it gets there, the star or the planet or even the comet usually stands still and then moves on. And usually standstills are very, very important, especially in our system. You understand them. So all these are gateway transit. Now, how do we determine the ones that are important? We just said that over one day, a planet or a star or a transitory point in the heavens will undergo all its diurnal transit points. So how do we determine which ones to use to speak in a creative way? We use the understanding of both diurnal cycles and planetary cycles to determine that. So let's say like at this point in the year, which is for us, we're almost 3/4 way. We are in the 9th month, so actually we are about the 3/4 way. So we have gone through the first transit, we've gone through the second transit, and we passed almost couple of months ago, almost over a month ago, the midpoint. And therefore that means that we began the third phase of the sun's seasons, or the third period. And because the sun is in its third period, therefore we wait for it to undergo the third transit, the third diurnal transit. So the third diurnal transit is the one that is important at this particular period in time. If you look at the moon, which has a much shorter planetary cycle, actually the shortest of all planets, is that you'll see that you'll be moving from one to the other in about a week. So in a week, the moon's phase will be more congruent to the starting transit point. And over the second week, it will be more congruent. It will have greater relation to the second transit point, the second quarter point. So we'll be moving across a day and we look for that point in time. And we will speak creatively at that point. So that is how we are able to choose them, because you can understand. So we don't just use the diurnal cycle. So we understand the planetary cycle, and then we match it to the diurnal cycle. And when they truly agree with each other, that is when we move to either declare certain words, either of beginning or initiating a creative project, or bringing it to a culmination, as depends. If you'd like to learn more, of course, welcome to join our global community. We try to explain things a lot more there. Now, let's go to the second part of our podcast today, and we are going to look at week 35 that is coming in right now, 29 minutes. So this is, I don't want to go into this graphic. It will be available on the blog, and you'll be able to. So this is a table of data, and I'm not going to any one of them. I just wanted to show you how much effort we put to, we are very thorough, so that we have proper understanding of the planets and where they are. There's so much points that go into determining our understanding of the planetary cycles of every planet and what it does. And the other thing to know is much of what we do is understanding of time. So much of what we do, like we do offer what we call natal or natal charts or natal profiles. natal astrological profiles, they have to do with the point in time where your influence across the cosmic sphere is drawn from, the moment of your birth. And therefore, we do draw the junctions of the planets at that point in time. And that helps us understand future points where you can be able to speak, where you have influence, and where there may be certain blockages that may not allow you to speak effectively. Now, I don't want to go into that graphic any more than we need, unless you person has a question, but this just shows us the planets where they are at the middle of the week. The middle of this week is the sunrise of Wednesday. So the coming Wednesday, at the very point of sunrise, at a very specific place, this is a snapshot of that time. And because it's the very middle of the week, it gives us an understanding of really where the planets are. And I want us to look at now what we call the major planets. By the way, this again, this graphic is going to be available on our on that blog page, so that you can be able to look at it, and we're going to provide it also maybe in our global astrological community. But this is a very simple graphic. It's we had a choice to use what we call horoscopes or natal charts or planetary charts that are much more abstract. This is not abstract in itself. This is the very same thing as a map of the Earth spread across a flat plane. Let me see if I can be able to highlight. I think I'm trying to look for the highlighter. And I cannot get it. Okay, I'll have to use the basic highlighter to be able to point out certain things here. A bit of time. Try to look for my pointer here. Just a minute. Okay, so if I point here at the very middle of a screen, moving from left to right, there's a line. And that line is actually a circle. It's a circle that we call the equator. But this is not the equator on the globe of the Earth. This is the equator of the celestial heavens. It follows the very same outlines, like it's just above the equator of the Earth. In reality, actually, Earth's equator is a projection of that celestial equator. Before, I tell people, before they were cartographers, they were astrologers. Cartographers just copied the terms and references of astrologers. So this was astrology: equator, the celestial equator, the North Pole, the South Pole, the Tropic of Cancer, Tropic of Capricorn. Actually, if you look, of course, I don't know whether that question is ever asked of geography teachers. You can ask your teacher, okay, we are looking at the, like, let's say the Tropic of Capricorn. So where is Capricorn on the Earth? There's no Capricorn on the Earth. Capricorn is an astronomical and astrological description. It's a constellation that is there in the celestial heaven, these two, Cancer and Capricorn. Therefore, they are taken, and right here they are for us, although we don't call them Tropic of Capricorn and Tropic of Cancer, like this one, which is on your maps, on your geographical maps, you find labeled the Tropic of Cancer. It's actually the Tropic of what you call Gemini. It is Gemini because right now, the point where its definition is defined by the point where this cycle, which is the cycle of the sun or the zodiac, circle touches that tropic. And tropic, of course, just means the turning point, because that is the point at which the sun turns. And again, this is the very same thing. So if we locate the planets, the major planets, and as you can see from the legend that is displayed to the right of that graphic, I am keeping looking at the time. We still have 22 minutes to the beginning of the week. Is that you see we are talking about the 7 major planets, beginning with the Sun, the Moon, planet Mars, Mercury, Jupiter, Venus, and Saturn. You may wonder why I put them in that order. I put them in that order because that is the order within which the greatest understanding of the application to time and calendars is. The Sun is the planet that is considered to embody the day of Sunday. The Moon embodies the day of Monday. Mars embodies Tuesday. Mercury, Wednesday. Jupiter or Thor, Thursday. Venus or Frigg, depending on which kind of pantheon of gods you follow, represents Friday, and Saturn clearly represents Saturday. So that is how, and this is how they are located across week 5. Now I want to make a comment here because about 2-3 months ago I was getting a lot of inbox questions about something called the lineup of the planets. And I was trying to tell everybody, planets are always in a lineup. You just need to define for us what that lineup is and what it means and how significant it is. If you look at the 7 major planets, there's very definite plan to how they are located. If you see anything from what we call the celestial houses, or what we call quadricell 1 and quadricell 2, there's barely any planet. The only one is this one, which is planet Saturn, if you can see from this graphic, which actually is at the midway point. And then the rest of them are across this hemisphere, which is the eastern and the northern hemisphere. It's only the northern hemisphere because at this point the zodiac is located to the north. So yeah, there is a part of the celestial heavens that is to the south, but no planets, or rather major planets, never visit them. So that's why they are all located to the north. And one of the most significant things here is not only that all the 7 major planets are located here, and by the way, this is the part of the celestial heavens in our understanding that presents light ascendancy. And in the time of what we call the creative cycle, they represent like birthing or manifestation and travail, the point at which you make things happen and you legalize, program them to have permanence in the earth. So it's very, very crucial and important itself. Now, let's talk about a little bit before we move on to look at the minor planets. This planet, Saturn, is very, very important because this is house number 6. It is itself a division of heaven that is only 30 degrees wide. The sun takes about a month to transit across such a house. It's not just house 6, but whether it's house 7, which you call Habizelda, or house 8, 9, 10, 11, or 12. Any of them, the sun takes a month, about 30 days. It's likely more than 30 days, is it? Yes, it's a little bit more than 30 days. And the moon takes about 2.5 days, but planet Saturn takes about 2.5 years, between 2.5 and 3 years. The thing about planet like Saturn is that they are not always moving forward in their cycles, is that sometimes they turn back. Like now, what we're anticipating, and we know for certain, we're not just anticipating, but we are sure that after Saturn moves to house Habizelda in the next few weeks, it will take maybe 2-3 months for it to be moved forward in a half zero, but before it has moved away from influence of house number 6, it's going to turn back. So because of that forward backward motion, the entire journey takes 3 years or a little bit longer than 3 years for that planet to go. We know what it indicates, and I'll say this one planet Saturn is the slowest of the 7 major planets, and it tends to rule over the more consequential parts of our mandate. If you look at it from just a secular understanding of astrology, we call them these things that we call legacy, or things that you do for the benefit of the world. So they can tell you when you can initiate such kind of projects, and usually long-term projects, things that you don't do from a selfish, because selfish begins with the smaller cycles. Smaller cycles rule over the lowest areas of our creative motivation, the things that have to do with us. But the cycle of planet Saturn rules over a much more important and lasting cycle. Let's look at so the other thing to notice about this, of course, the moon moves a lot quickly. It's here, and within just a couple of days it will be moving back to begin its cycle. The cycles of the moon are both they are understood with relation to the sun, and that is what we call a synodic cycle, but there's usually another cycle that is important that you may have heard me refer to in passing, especially when you are doing the transits of the moon over last week. And these have unique resonance to the importance of this year. This year is the most important year up to today in our calendar. But let's I hope that my timer is giving me correct timing, so that yeah, I'm certain we are just about 15 minutes from the point at which we have to welcome the new week, or rather week 35, the first day of week 35. And I just wanted to just finish with explaining something else, that of these we have the planet Venus and Mars, no sorry, Mercury, Venus, and of course Saturn. They are behind the sun. The sun is, I'm no longer pointing, using the laser pointer to show us. So you can see Saturn here, Venus here, and Mercury here. Venus is still in retrograde, and because the way we understand the cycles of Venus and Mercury is not with relationship to how it's moving against the stars or across the houses themselves, but it's how far removed it is from the sun. And the distance between the sun and Venus is increasing every single day, although we are reaching a point. So we have Mercury undergoing what we call retrograde. Mercury is also in retrograde, but right now it has started moving in prograde, and therefore what you see across the other weeks is that it will come closer and closer to the sun, and soon we're going to have a conjunction that will mark for us the halfway point in its cycle. So planet Venus is still in its first phase of its cycle. Mercury is in the second. These are very crucial, important creative planets, but we need to understand a little bit more about who you are and how you relate to them for me to be able to give you very specific pointers about how you can make use of their cycles. Now, let's look at our minor planets. And these are the Neoteran minor planets. Now, Neoteran minor planets are not just planets. They include 6 minor planets, and that is planet Vesta, planet Ceres, planet Uranus, planet Neptune, planet Pluto, and planet Eris. but also three planetary bodies that are not exactly planets, but they are points. The anti-solar point. The anti-solar point is the point that indicates for you whenever you see a rainbow. And if you can look at the very center of that rainbow and drill a hole all through the earth and all the way to the heavens that are under that point, you'll get to the anti-solar point. So it's very, very crucial. It's related to certain important indicators of dealings of men and gods. Now, one of the things you're going to see, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, is that we have certain alignments too. As you can see, of the 16, or rather of the 9 minor planets and as transitory celestial points, is that you see many of them are still, about 6 of them are still located within the second half of the celestial heavens. Just again, as I've said, it's very, very important. But the thing is, as you can see from here, from drawing, like if you look at this is planet Vesta, and if you look at even Ceres here, or you look at wondering whether this is Aries here. They are not exactly on the zodiac line. They don't follow the zodiac very well. So it's very important. We try to, but the indicators are very important. One of the things you can see is that here there's 3 planets that are almost at the same place in time. It's very, very important. It's crucial for this week. And if you go to the major planets, you see also planet Saturn and planet Venus are still very close to that point as well. And this will bring us to the highlights of this week as we conclude this section of looking forward to what is happening on week 35. We are still 11 minutes from the point where we will have to speak a blessing to this new day as it is coming. And it's not just the first day of week. As I said, it is the start of week 35 in our calendar year. And let's go to the slide for our teaching. I think that one of the major highlights is this, and this one would be specific. It's important. It's not like what people are telling me a month or 2 months ago about a line of planets, and the only unique thing is that they are within the evening sky. Is that we have a conjunction at the cusp of Neoteran Celestial House 6 and House 7, which in Neoteran will speak and language called the house Habizeld. That is planet Venus, planet Saturn, planet Ceres, Neptune, and lunar ascending node. This is unique. We usually define, if you go a little bit deeper into understanding, we talk about conjunctions. Conjunctions is when planets are so close together, you cannot distinguish between them. Unfortunately, the ones that for these particular, only Venus and Saturn are actually naked eye stars, planets, you could be able to see them with your naked eye. And if you can look in the morning, you'll be able to see them quite high. They rise at around what I call 10 o'clock in the late night, that is 4 a.m. They are rising around that time. You'll be able to see them, and they are very bright. They are considerably bright. You don't need a telescope to look at them. You'll be able to see them. But to see Ceres and Neptune, you'd need a powerful telescope because they're not very bright. The lunar ascending node, you'll not be able to see it at all. It is not a light. It's just an important point. It indicates for us where the moon, if it comes in alignment with that lunar ascending node, then we talk about it being either a lunar eclipse or it could be a solar eclipse, depending on how the sun and the moon are indicated for that. So the lunar ascending node and lunar descending node, they are what? So I was saying when we come to Neoteran astrology and how we define things, a conjunction we have what we call perfect conjunctions. And if a planet is separated from the other by 3 degrees of the arc or less, then they're in perfect conjunction. And because of the way these ones are lined up together, they are all in perfect conjunction. Doesn't mean that Venus and every one of them is 3 degrees, but you find that maybe Venus and Saturn are maybe within 2 or 3 degrees, but maybe Venus and Neptune, they may be within 5 or 6 degrees from each other, but because Ceres is close enough to be considered to be in conjunction, perfect conjunction with Venus, then that puts Neptune as well in perfect conjunction. Perfect conjunctions are rare. Even 2 planetary conjunctions are rare. So to get 5 of them is something very, very unique. It's something very unique. Now, somebody may ask me, what does this mean for me? It could be good, it could be very good news, but it could also be very bad news. That is why it depends on your cosmic profile. So without that, that is why I tell people, encourage people, try to pursue more, because some of the things that you do here in public, they are only for application, universal application, but for specific applications about what you can do with this, because if you're born and in your profile you do have either the conjunction of Venus and Saturn, then that becomes a very, very important indicator. And that is, it can be very good for you to speak at that moment. But you could have been born when Venus and Saturn had the vibrational concordance between them was the very much opposite of what it is now. And that means you'd rather not speak creative at this moment. So everything is there up for interpretation. But because it's really a major conjunction, this can have a lot more universal appeal. But unless I have been able to look at your profile clearly, a complete profile, I may not be able to tell you exactly what this means, because it means different things to different people. Now, let's look at the other highlight. Seems like my slide. The other one is the conjunction of Mercury and Aries. And let me keep you just 5 minutes away from the countdown to the start of the new week. I'll be able to explain a little bit more as we move on. So we have what we call Mercury and Aries. They are in conjunction at the cusp of Zelda and House 8. That's also unique. But because you see, of course, Mercury is a major planet, but Aries is not a major planet. I'm trying to go back to the slide with the major planets, and you can see, so I can see where Mercury is. Mercury is here, so not very close to that edge of House 8. And if you look at where Aries is this planet. Aries is a very, very important planet for us for some very particular and important reasons that we may, if you follow our weekday KTM midweek service a couple of weeks ago, or rather I think about 2 weeks ago, yeah, you may have heard me explain a little bit more about planet Aries. But something has happened that is important at this point in time. Let's go back to that slide of the last slide in our week 35 highlights, is that Aries is coming to the cusp of entry into house number 8 for the very first time. Now, remember, we talked about Aries is not a zodiacal planet. Aries does not follow the zodiac as it moves across the celestial heavens. It actually moves very close to, actually, if we stay for hundreds of years, this graphic will become useless for describing the motion of Aries, because in about 100 or 200 years, it will be somewhere. Our grid goes up to 63 degrees north. But planet Aries goes all the way to 63 degrees north. So it goes way beyond that. So, but even all the same, it has been very close to the exit of Zelda, house number 7. Never happened, but this week, it moved finally within that orb that we define in Neoteran astrology, 3 degrees. It was within 3 degrees of moving into house 8. And therefore, we can say that itself, it's important. Of course, the main date is still about 36 days, 35 days away from us, 5 weeks exactly from now, when Aries will not pass into house 8, but it will move from the southern hemisphere, move across the equator, and be regarded as a star in the north. For the first time in the last, I think, 341 years, 341 years or thereabouts, we are now exactly 3 minutes away from when we are going to mark the start of a new week. Now, I want to give you specific instructions because we don't have access to we are not using the WhatsApp group. And by the way, you may have noticed that this is a slightly later than we usually observe this, because usually observe with a group of people that are located within Nairobi. But now we standardized it. We have standardized the start of a new day, at least for the new week, and we'll be observing them from our standard point for our calendar. And that is a lot western to where we are located, and therefore that gives us 2 minutes. Now, what I'm going to ask you is to stand up, face the direction of west 285 degrees thereabouts if you have a compass, or if not, look just to where the sun is setting in the general direction of that. And I will speak to help us make a pronouncement that will give us influence across the week. So here we are on the start of this 35th week of our calendar and the 6th day of our 9th month in the year 0005 era reign. And we have witnessed a week of greatness. We have witnessed a week of great amountings and progress, ascending and revelation of all kind. And as we step into this new week, we are decreeing a start of something new. Let there be found for us all the influence that can be got in this time. Let there be increase of our searchings and our economic occupations. Let everything that we touch have significance. Every word that we speak, redoubtable in its creative effect. I speak a blessing that is unsurpassed across every one of the 7 days that are coming in this 35th week. Let them be consequential. Let them have cosmic significance, universal significance. Let those who even come close to us, to any one of us, receive redemptive powers. They receive redemptive blessing that will draw them and beckon them to the place of where we are. Let everything that comes and happens to us be of universal significance. Let nothing go to waste. There is going to just be increase. There's going to be just new orderliness. There's going to be new understanding. Let the wisdom that we need to plan and progress the things that we are beholding come in multiples, in many measures, bushels and basketfuls of harvest. Let any contention that we may enter into with any force, be it material, be it human, or be it be extraterrestrial, aid in our advantage and favor. Let things go according to what we plan. Let every objective that we have not only be fulfilled, but be exceeded. And let everything that we put a desire upon become a realization. Fullness, tangibility, uncontestable and impeachable evidence and fullness and realization. These souls, everyone that listens to this voice, let them be blessed, let them be fruitful, let them have dominion, let their words be like law. These words, they are sure, they are true, they cannot be contravened, they cannot be subverted, they cannot be changed. For me, make them to be so, not only in this realm, but in all that are to come. It is so. And let us say together, it is good in our sight. That is how we end. Thank you so much for joining us. Let us meet next week. Continue with you following us on a Neoteran global community. Have a fruitful new week. See you tomorrow for those of us who will be in the Sunday service. Shalom. I don't know whether people are still reasoning, but what I'm getting is somebody who asked that I repeat something I said about Saturn and Venus. I'm saying Saturn and Venus, and of course not just Saturn and Venus. If I go back to that particular slide, is that Saturn, Venus, and Saturn, Venus, Ceres, Neptune, they are in conjunction. And they're in conjunction somewhere between the divisions between house 6 and house 11. We say that is a cusp of the two houses. And it's an indication, as I've said, what their significance is, it could be something good, it could be bad. It depends on every one of us, our specific profile. They are in conjunction, something in conjunction, that means they are within indistinguishable difference in location. If you can see them, they are morning, they are right there in the morning, and I said is a time around when you can see them, because Venus and Saturn are bright enough to be seen with your naked eye, and you have clear skies towards early in the dawn